Obviously, a new season, a couple new players coming into the program this year. What's your focus moving into the season based on what success you had last year?
Well, I mean, we've taken a good hard look at some of the reasons we didn't win those games. That's been a big focal point for us, is trying to determine what it is we need to do better than what we did the previous year. Analyzed all the league stats and just trying to put some of those fires out and improve. I like the fact, I think with this roster now, it may be the first time that we look like you're supposed to look at the 5 spot, the 4 spot. For the most part, we have 6'9" 4 men and 6'11", 7'5" men, and nope, we're not playing undersized. And I think that's going to help us tremendously as far as rebounding goes, which was oftentimes our Achilles heel, especially against the top teams. We've implemented a new offensive style. We're spending a lot of time with all the parts of that. There's always the whole teaching method. So there's a lot of individual breakdown, 3-on-0 types of drills, with the idea. I don't always want to be a coach standing up calling plays and turning our team into a robotic type of team, but I think I'd like to kind of turn it over to them a little bit and let them make some plays, and know that there's going to be a time and a place for called plays, but kind of sit back, let them make plays, and giving them that freedom, I think, is going to mean one of our other Achilles heels was not having the number of turnovers, that we had, and so that's been a big focal point for us right now is offensive efficiency and rebounding the basketball.
The team may not have finished their season as well as you had hoped, maybe getting into the NCAA tournament or whatever, but it seems like there's a lot of national hype for your program going in. How do you balance that with this team, especially with a few of these new players coming in and not knowing what they necessarily bring to the table?
Well, I don't think our approach is changing one bit. That question was posed to me a couple of weeks ago, and it doesn't change what we do as a staff or a team. And there's preseason polls, and we didn't pay too much attention to them when everybody picked us 12th. And the variety of places that were being picked right now, but I'm certainly not going to start thinking that's very important when it wasn't before. Where we can continue on the same mission statement that we've had since we've been here is that we're waking up every day and trying to figure out a way to get better and challenge ourselves individually and make our team better. And, I understand this is that time of year where you have to do all the prognosticating. Is that the right word? And they got to do the preseason polls. There's a little downtime during football bye weeks and that kind of stuff. So somebody's got to doodle and come up with who's 1 through 12. I mean, I got a email from one of the top writers in the country wanting me to predict 1 through 12 in our league, and I sent him a note back and said, "Why? That's your job. I've got my own headaches to come up with." But it's certainly better, I think. Nobody is ever going to place more expectations on myself than I am myself. So I feel like we're always picked first. I feel like we're always picked 12th. It makes no difference. You can play the underdog role or maybe the target role. It doesn't change our approach one bit, and I think our guys understand that. The level of competition between our 18 league games this season and then a handful of really tough preseason games, we're going to have to bring it. Well, I mean, the old saying, if it doesn't kill you, it'll make you stronger, kind of deal. I mean, we're biting off a lot. We play Wichita State at home, and we've got 4 really tough preseason games. UNLV was the other team you didn't mention. Tough environments, great crowd environments, real physical. I think 3 top 10 preseason teams, if I'm not mistaken. So it's what we'll take out of those is we're going to be challenged in a lot of different areas, and we're going to have to be good, and we're going to have to be good early to be competitive in those games. And all you can hope is that helps you come league time, not be in a in a foreign environment that you haven't experienced before. So there'll be a lot of different plays and a lot of different ways that we respond, and hopefully it's in a positive way. It can't become overwhelming. We've got to continue to make progress, even if things aren't panning out the way we'd like them to.
What kind of progression have you seen from DeLon Wright coming into his senior season?
Well, I mean, I think we would all agree that it was an atypical junior season. Most junior college players, it's almost known and written down that you're not really going to have the production from them until maybe Christmas at best before they make the adjustment. And so DeLon has always been a little bit ahead of the curve, I think. He's surprised all of us when he got here and had a tremendous junior year. And what I see right now is pretty darn impressive. It's a kid, first and foremost, that a lot of people are talking about playing at the next level, and I don't think he buys into a lot of the hype. But I know one of the top priorities for him right now is to get his degree and to get it by the spring. And in talking to him, we made a few concessions with him that would allow him to slow the pace down so he could finish under a high-pressure senior year, and he chose not to do that. So he's diving headfirst into the academic side of it. He's playing extremely hard in our practice settings. That was one of the things I think when he came in, he deferred to a lot of guys. He didn't want to be too outspoken and too overwhelming maybe when he first got here. But now he's one of the hardest workers in our practice setting. He's going as hard as anybody, if not harder, in drills, making things really hard for people. He's gained weight, which has been an issue for him. And all I know is we've had maybe 5 scrimmage type environments competitive at the end of a practice, and it's been maybe to the point where it's overtime, next basket wins. They're close games, and I know maybe of the 5 times that we've had that, he's made the game-winning shot. If maybe 4 times, if not for sure, I know 3. So that's what we talked about last year in the offseason is DeLon. We put the ball in your hands late in some games, and it didn't work out. We missed opportunities, maybe turnovers, whatever the case might be, and for us to take the next step, you're going to have to be that guy for us. And the best way to be that guy is to be placed in that environment and a lot of times in practice so that it's not an out-of-body experience when the popcorn's popping and the game's on the line. And I think he's taken that all to heart, and he's providing a lot of leadership for us. So, it's been very positive up to this point.
You talk about the new offensive style you're implementing. Could you maybe describe a little bit more the characteristics of that style and the ownership players are going to have to take as individuals? I mean, is DeLon going to be the guy making some more calls and trying to make some more plays?
It's not going to be so much a called offense. We'll have specials that we run specifically within our offense where we know what we're trying to get. But for the most part, it's a ball movement offense. You shouldn't see the ball in anybody's hands for more than a second or two. I think that will in effect take some of the heat off of DeLon, maybe where he had the ball in his hand a lot and teams could key in on him. This is going to be an awful lot of player movement, ball movement, and making reads, basically. There's a lot of similarities, I think, with the triangle offense. It's not that offense per se, but it's the same philosophy is that you hit the first open guy. There's a chain of kind of a chain of options, reads that you go through, and everything has an answer at the end. If the ball goes here, this is what we do. And that's where we're getting as a team right now is making sure that everybody's comfortable so that we can make some reads on the fly. And then the next step for us is going to be adding multiple defensive styles so that we can run that offense, whether we're playing, at San Diego State in full, pressure, 95 feet away, or if you're playing against the pack-style team. So that's part of the challenge is be able to run this offense, when presented with a lot of different defensive looks.
And you've said that you may start 2 or 3 freshmen this year. I was kind of wondering.
When did I say that?
Last week.
Was I drinking? No.
Long weekend of practices, huh?
What's that?
Long weekend of practices, huh?
It was good. We've had some good practices.
But could you maybe talk about some of the new guys and where they're kind of fitting in as you guys get practice going?
Well, I mean, new guys, starting smallest to biggest would be Isaiah Wright, who's a really solid point guard. Pass first point guard, stronger than most freshmen, I think, and ahead of the game defensively. He was really well coached in high school and AAU programs, so not maybe what you consider a normal freshman trying to figure some things out. Isaiah's playing really well. Of all the freshmen, and Chris Reyes, our new junior college player, I think we talked about it Friday or Saturday. Kyle, you were there, right, when you asked me? Yes. And I think a lot of time, let's say you have 5 new guys. I don't know for sure, but my guess would be you probably have 2 that you would hope would exceed expectations on average, 2 that probably have a little bit more work to do, and then 1 that's probably right about where you thought. And I can honestly say with our 5 guys that everybody's ahead of where I thought they'd be. We certainly don't have anybody in the category that, man, they've got a long way to go. They're still freshmen and young players and new to our system, but there's been a lot of pleasant surprises, and Isaiah's one of them. Kyle Kuzma is doing a nice job. It's kind of fun to watch some of these freshmen because oftentimes it's a deer in the headlights, and as a player, every time you take a step up, the game is faster and stronger and more demanding. So, these guys go from maybe being at the king of the hill with where they're coming from, and all of a sudden they go through that rite of passage again where they got to earn their stripes. And so it's part of it, and part of it's a little initiation phase. It's fun to make guys sweat and squirm and cry and uncomfortable. I mean, I think that's all part of it, and it's fun of watching kids. It's a fun part of watching kids develop as players. Kuzma's doing a nice job, really skilled offensively, long, rebound and playing a lot of 3. At 6'9", and really has a knack on the glass, kind of provides us something in a practice setting that we haven't had a lot, where you try to simulate some of those offensive rebounders on the Arizonas and the UCLA, the long, athletic players. So having him out there's really improved our defense, I think, on both sides. And Burcott's doing a fantastic job. He's skilled and shooting it and running and athletic, everything we knew that he was going to be. Chris Reyes is bringing a physical approach to the game. He's always on balance and low and, kind of a bull in the china closet physical guy that is good for our team, is one of those points that we haven't had. And then, you look at Big Jakob Podol, who's great. He's we just met this morning, and one of the things we talk a lot about is not making the same mistake twice. It's a game of mistakes. Basketball is, and it's fine to make mistakes, and we'll coach our way through it. But you can't make the same mistake multiple times. And he's a kid from the beginning. We've almost got a chuckle out of it that seems to be a little bit ahead of the learning curve in terms of his ability to learn things, and he's getting more and more comfortable. He's up to 242. I think he's gained 14 pounds since he's been here, which is a tremendous credit to our strength and conditioning and nutrition staff. 14 pounds is a lot in 3 months, and it's not fat. It's lean muscle, and so it's fun. We've got a lot of size in that group. 4 of those guys that I just mentioned were, 6'8", 6'9", and long, and we'll certainly be in a position where we can probably be more competitive in warm-ups, if nothing else. Did you get that joke, Kyle? Could you laugh or crack a smile? Or?
You just talk about, you do have all these players coming back from last year, pretty much everybody, all these good new players coming in. And is that obviously a good problem to have, but when you have so many good players and you can't play them all, you may have to redshirt some for a change, or just how do you look at that whole thing?
Yeah, more so than ever. I think that that's a word, that might pop up here as we move forward. We want to try to do what's right for the kids, what's right for our program, and if a red shirt is used with one of our guys this year, the thing that needs to be remembered is it's a positive thing. It's not a, sit you on the shelf because we just want to pay for your school for a year. It's basically what it boils down to. It's another year to get your body stronger, be around the program, maybe spend extra time in the classroom toward your degree without the stresses of a regular season when it happens, and it probably will with us. But it's an investment in the future, and going through it initially with a lot of red shirts, it's maybe a little disheartening. But I've really never known one at the end of the day to say, boy, that was a mistake, because by the time they're a junior and senior, maybe after a redshirt year, they're typically ahead of the curve a little bit. So it's a new problem for us for sure in terms of having those guys. It's ultra competitive in our practice setting right now with at least 2 guys in every position that can play, and we're not going to have DeLon Wright and Jordan Loveridge be first and third in the league in minutes played. We're going to play at a pace that's maybe a little bit faster offensively and defensively, and rely on some of that depth. Everybody will be called into play. There'll be at least 10 guys that'll be active participants in our rotation, and assuming we don't have any injuries, and that part's gonna be a little different feel, I think, than what you're used to, where it's more of a controlled tempo because we don't have some depth. I think there might be a little bit more pace to it.
Also, can you just talk a little bit more about the 5 spot? You have 2 returning part-time starters, and then all these new guys, just how that's stacking up right now.
Well, I think Jakob, our 4 and our 5 spot are interchangeable in our offense. A lot of offenses can be run with 2 guards, 2 wings, and a center. Which if you're the 5 kind of deal, because you do something completely different if you're the 4 in that type of offense. For us, our 1 through 3 within this offense are pretty interchangeable. They're doing the same things within our offense. Obviously, somebody has to bring the ball up the court, and that could, whether it's Brandon, DeLon, Isaiah, whoever might be that person. So our 1 through 3 are all the same category, and then our 4 and our 5 basically are doing the same thing within our system as well. So we could very well end up with Dallin Bashinsky and Jeremy Olsen on the floor at the same time, even though you probably look at both of those guys and say they're 4s or they're 5s. As long as they can guard and rebound their position, then they can be on the floor. So I think some of this offense is going to help us with some versatility. We could go small too. We could have Chris Reyes and Jordan Loveridge be our 4 and our 5. So again, it's competitive, it's healthy, for our guys, and the level of intensity at our practices has been at a pace that I haven't seen. It's a lot of fun to be a part of, and when a practice is over, there's some guys that might be looking at each other a little cockeyed from the competition, but when practice is over, they're back to being, buddies and brothers, and it's a healthy thing right now.
Larry, could you expound a little bit on DeLon? And you talked about taking more responsibility, wanting to be more involved, like to be the man in practice and with schooling and getting that done. Can you just talk about, is that maturity on his part, or does he just feed off of having more things to do, more?
I hope it's whatever it is, it's a good thing. I don't know what the label would be. Number one, I think he's a really solid kid, and he's growing up. He's making decisions. It's what we talked to his parents about when he came here. Is you'd like to be a part as a coach of somebody growing up and the light bulb coming on, and hey, I'm becoming a man. Not to say he's ready for whatever's next, but it's been a good process, and he entails a lot of what we talk about within our program. Kids on our team like to play with him. He makes them better. He's soft-spoken, but he's starting to lead now. A lot of different types of leadership, and he's being seen as a leader. And I think when you have maybe one of the more talented players on your team also being one of the harder workers, in that category, when you combine those two elements, then I think it's a dangerous deal. And I don't know if a year ago that we would have maybe said he was working as hard. And it wasn't, because he was ill-willed about it. It was, part of it was the junior college newness. And so we're seeing a lot more, that leadership skill start to come out of him. And as always, I love coaching kids in their senior year. In his case, it's been a long road, a couple of years of JUCO. He'll have a couple of years here. And whether it's Dallin, Bashinsky, he's got a story to tell. When your senior year's in play, there should be a sense of urgency, and I think we're seeing that a little bit from those guys, from our seniors. And, they're pushing some buttons and motivating some of their teammates and, letting them know that, hey, this is my last go-round. I want to finish on a good note.
One more thing, Larry. You mentioned the education thing. Does that the fact that he wants to attack the schooling with the veracity that he does surprise you as well?
Well, I'd be lying if I said, because we had a plan. And as a player, for me, and I don't know how all this NBA stuff's going to shake out. There's a lot of people making predictions. There's an awful lot of predictions that don't come true. And, there's people that don't get talked about that make it, and people that get talked about that don't make it. I'm not fearful that DeLon's going to get a big head and let that stuff, But I do know from my own experience in my senior year, there was an awful lot of pressure and talk about me playing professionally. And so when the season ended, it was, the Chicago pre-draft camp, and they used to have a 10-day tournament in Hawaii, and you're flying all over the country in the spring. In essence, what is your one chance, your one interview to maybe have a professional career? And so I put my school on the back burner, and I withdrew from all my classes that spring semester and knew that at some point I was going to come back. So, I kind of presented that opportunity for DeLon if it happens, that he can, focus on the basketball, and it was his decision. He was the first person to go into our academic department and say, no, I don't want the slow track, I want the fast track, I want to get my degree when I leave. So I think that speaks volumes in terms of where he wants to be and what type of person he is. Mm-hmm.
You talked a little bit about how a redshirt year could help. Could you talk specifically about how it's helped Kyle coming back this year?
Yeah, it wasn't theoretically a red shirt because it was more of an academic issue through the NCAA, but it's, think about the weight room for him, becoming familiar with the environment. He wasn't able to practice, Kyle Kuzma, which I think is a big part. As a red shirt, you still get to continue to practice. You just can't compete in the games. So it's, maybe it's a weight issue, trying to put on some weight, and then it's hard during a basketball season to gain weight because you're expending so many calories. Trying to break even is usually the goal. But if you're on a red shirt situation, then you can kind of taper your workout and your diet differently and actually put on some lean tissue that way. So sometimes it's a mental, benefit, sometimes physical, combination of both. I've never known it to be a bad thing.